Welcome to the Crash and Church Show. We are here today to talk about some of the crazy things going on, specifically related to, we wanted to talk about the transgender issues that are going on. We've kind of avoided a little bit, I think, because it's such a hot topic and we have such strong views on it. And it's just maybe a little uncomfortable to if someone who is pro gender changing and transgender stuff and things like that here's our views, the likelihood is that they're going to be very upset by it. So we're going to be careful.
Prepare to be offended.
Right.
Prepare to be offended. But honestly, I don't care anymore.
I care enough that I'll temper the way I say things for sure. I'm not going to call anyone an idiot or use divisive language intentionally, but I'm not going to withhold from saying. Okay, yeah, you'll do that for me.
I'll do it, yeah.
But yeah, I'm not going to withhold from saying what I believe to be true, but I will be careful in how I say it, obviously. But yeah, the transgender issue, it's been growing, it's continuing to grow, and we're seeing lots of responses to it, and particularly with youth. And so a lot of the stuff that's in the news is related to Florida, the state that you're in. In that what Ron DeSantis has been doing, but also in my state, Utah, they just passed a law that is banning the of what they call is gender affirming care, and then there's a lot of extreme responses to that in the negative as well, but also and once again the voices that are the loudest are the minority that are at the Capitol in Utah screaming at the top of the lungs about the injustice of it all. And, the majority of people probably think the same and support that sort of thing. So,
it's interesting that the American Medical Association was the ones who coined the phrase gender affirming care. It used to be sex change. It used to be cross-dressing. It used to be called all of these different things.
Went out just then.
Oh, wow. Really bad. Look at that.
If you can get it to go back.
Yes, it did. Hey, there it is. It goes. I just had to wave. Okay. So yeah, it's interesting too, that they use that term gender affirming care, because it's supposed to basically what it means is you're supposed to make somebody feel good so that you can affirm that what they are feeling is good and okay. And they say that this is what the American Medical Association, this is the chief medical association or organization for the United States of America. This is what all of our rules are based on. This is what all of the trends will come out of. This is the governing body that basically says what is okay and what is not okay. And they say on its website,
defines the quote unquote science.
Right, exactly. And they say on their website that every major medical association recognizes, listen to how they say this too. They say it as if it's such it's factual.
It's settled.
That every major, settled science. Every major medical association recognizes the vital role of gender-affirming care in improving the physical health and mental well-being of transgender individuals. So they don't mention the fact at all that people who are transgender, who do transition at some point in their lives, or they undergo some sort of transgender treatment, end up being much higher candidates and have a higher likelihood of committing suicide later in their life, or needing medical or at least mental health care. Yeah. Yes, or they need health care, mental health care attention later in life. They go through therapy. They go through all of these things because they had all of these things put on them at such a young age, which is now the really big pull, is to get kids to do this at such a young age when they are very impressionable and they don't have the ability to really rationally think through decisions. And they do this, and then later in life, when they start to realize kind of what's going on, all of a sudden all these things start coming back, and we have case after case now of people who transitioned one way or another, and then they transitioned back later in life because they saw what a destructive thing it was in their lives.
But even if you don't, the whole idea of that is it's pseudoscience at best. Like, because it's based entirely on the anecdotal reporting of people, saying how they feel. And there's so many problems with that as far as the scientific method. First being that people.
Well, there is no scientific method here from the Medical Americans Association. All they say is they recognize the role of it.
Yeah. But when you're talking sociological things like that, it's all just, people saying what they think. So there is no method applied to it other than just like, 1,000 people said they were happier because of this situation, which is totally unreliable. People have a hard time even, comprehending themselves in most cases. But then it's just technically impossible to say that, okay, I was miserable as a teenager and then I went through all these life experiences and now I'm happier than I was as a teenager. That doesn't tell you whether or not they would have been happier going a different path. It just, the relative state of happiness that they're reporting or think that they have, even if everyone that went through that sort of experience claimed they were happier after going through it, and even if that ended up being true, it still doesn't indicate whether or not they would have been even happier had they gone a different direction. And it doesn't indicate long-term effects from it. Like you may be happier immediately, like you make a choice to do something that you've really been wanting to do. Obviously, when you do that, you're going to say, I'm happier now because you finally did what you really wanted to do. But that doesn't mean that 20 years down the road, you're not going to be a miserable wreck because of the choices that you made and the way it hurts your life and causes issues.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I don't think there's absolutely any concrete evidence whatsoever that says that a person is going to be happier because they changed their gender.
Yeah.
No, or they went through. Yeah. They went through all of that identity.
Because there can't be. That's identity my point,
crisis stuff. There is no happiness in evil. There is no happiness in wickedness. And when they say that that it improves the physical health and mental well-being of transgender individuals, nothing could be further from the truth. It's sad because the confusion that children have. Children are extremely impressionable, and they don't really understand some of these things. And so they do grab these kids when they're very young, when they don't really have a firm grasp on things. But even the kids can recognize, they look and they recognize, hey, wait a minute, you're saying that you're a woman, but you're a dude. But they're being told that in order to make the person feel better about themselves, that they have to go along with it. They have to agree with it, and it's really causing this major dysphoria, this major confusion in our society.
Right, and we should qualify something you said just a little bit in that the idea that wickedness is never happiness. That's a truth that we believe, and I think is correct, but I don't think in every case that people who make these choices are engaging in wickedness, particularly based on exactly what you said, where it's children who are innocently being coerced by others into believing these things.
I think that the parents are absolutely culpable for I think the parents are culpable for the wickedness that they are impressing upon their children, and I think that the doctors who are involved in it are definitely wicked and causing harm to these children.
In most cases, I agree. I think there is probably some level of naivety, and just the social contagion is so strong that people get sucked into it. In cases, I think overall though that you're right, but the children themselves, there's an innocence there where they're being pulled.
There is an innocence in younger children, absolutely, and that's why I say that the culpable people are really the parents and the adults, the teachers, the counselors at school, the principals, the assistant principals, the college educators, the doctors, the medical personnel, the mental personnel. Those are all the people. Yeah, these are all the people that are culpable for this. This is a mass wickedness and evil that's being impressed upon in our society.
Right. So one of the things I was looking at when I was looking into this a little bit, I know you have a whole bunch of articles you've pulled, but I sent you that the graph that was talking. It wasn't talking about transitioning gender specifically. It was talking about just LGBT in general, which includes the transitioning. But it had shown. Let me pull it up real quickly. In Gen Z, so the young tweens and teens right now.
Yeah, people born between 1997 and 2012.
Those who identify as LGBT. First of all, in 2017, and it doesn't report for them before 2017 because they weren't old enough. 2017, the reporting starts 10% about reported as identifying as LGBT. That in and of itself is an astounding number. It's a huge change.
Yes, 1 in 10. Yeah, 1 in 10.
In the past 4 years, because the reporting goes through 2021, so it's been 5 now, but in 4 years, that jumped from 10% to 20%. It doubled. The amount of
21%.
Yeah,
21%. Just under 21.
Yeah, 21. So, I mean, and clearly, there's something going on. There's something in the water, so to speak. Not literally like there may be stuff in the water, not like Alex Jones says. That's not what I'm saying, though. But there's something going on in as what you would call a social contagion, I believe. And then the other number that I pulled up and sent to you is directly about trans, and this is only talking about those who have been in the UK recommended for gender. Was it therapy or was it
gender
actual
treatment,
surgery?
Gender
just
treatment.
Okay,
gender
treatment.
Yeah.
And that has gone up by, and I didn't look exactly from when to when.
It went from 97 people in 2009 to 2,510 in 2017 to 2018, which is a more than a 4,000% increase in 10 years.
And that's just those who had been recommended, treated. It doesn't even include those who just are identifying now.
Yeah.
And so the numbers are astounding, and the idea that this is just a natural state, because some people will make the argument that, well, it used to be something that was oppressed and suppressed, and so people just didn't say, and there is some argument to be, behind like, say, gay and lesbian stuff, where, back in the 1980s, there were probably a whole bunch of people who were gay who never came out of the closet because
they could have been met with pretty violent reaction by others. Yeah.
And so you would expect that as homosexuality became more socially expected, that the percentage of those reporting as homosexual would increase, in that regard. But the idea that any of that would increase by 4,000% in, under a decade in any amount of time at all, like 4,000%, it's ridiculous. And it's very clearly indicative that there's something else besides people who just literally are suffering from gender dysphoria or literally are, trapped in the wrong body sort of thing, or all the different arguments that are made about, what's going on with this. There may be cases where people really have that cognitive dissonance about how they feel about themselves, but that's stemming from just a natural who they are versus the social contagion factor. It's so obviously primarily being driven by the social contagion now of what's going on with the trend of it, and it's really quite scary.
Yeah, well, I think that going back to it being wicked and evil, and people who are doing it and participating in it are wicked and evil. The children who are being impressioned by this are being led by wicked and evil people, and it's a way for a societal change to happen. If you ever want a societal change to occur, you do what China did. You go after the children, you change their education, you take away their history so that they don't learn it, and that's what's happening right now in the United States and all over
China
Western,
doing that
all over
too.
Western world.
China's going after the children.
But it's all over the Western world, yes. Yeah. And China does have a deep hold on the children. That children will be sent off to schools. They will have no contact with the families, so that way they can be indoctrinated to the communist regimes.
Right, but they also some of that is actually, I don't want to get off on a huge tangent on this, but some of the things that China does are actually good. I don't want to sound like Trump, right, praising China, but
not taking kids away from their parents and
no, not
them.
that.
That's not
but
one of them.
What I was talking about is specifically with TikTok. So the version of TikTok in China, you may have heard this. The version of that is TikTok in China, I don't remember what it's called, does not allow the sexually explicit, innocuous, inane dancing.
No, the algorithms in the Western world are specifically pointed
to do that in the Western world by that.
Yep.
And they don't allow that in China. Instead, they have informative, educational, sometimes communistic,
uplifting, inspirational.
sometimes it's uplifting.
People
So
doing
there is good.
people doing well at
it.
sports, people excelling in music or something like that. Exactly. But here it's not. It's kids playing jokes on one another. It's kids being stupid. It's people
It's
being
mostly
stupid.
tweens dancing sexily.
Yeah, looking at the camera and doing their lip syncing and dancing because that's supposed to be awesome. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think that that one of the things that really bothers me about all of this is how willing society has just been going along with this. We have a lot of very influential people who are pushing this movement, and you now have this drag queen stuff that's going on, which is very much a part of the transgender identity and societal norms.
Well,
and
it's part of the cause to normalize it, for sure.
It's part of the cause to normalize it. Yet these are very, very sexualized events, and they get these kids in there because if they can turn these kids, then the kids grow up thinking, well, that's the way it's supposed to be. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
The father of
contagion.
all lies. Yeah. So this all stems from the father of lies. It's of all lies, and that's Satan, and that's why this is a very evil, a very wicked. Yeah, it's Satan. It's very wicked. It's very evil, and the willingness that people are so apt to condone it is really what really amazes me, because they latch on to it because they want to appear nice. And when you open the program and you said that you don't want to say what you really think because you want to appear,
I didn't say that. I said I want to be careful how I said what I really think.
Okay, you want to be careful. I don't care how I say it. I want to say it the way it is, and that is that this is really bad, and if you do it, you're evil and you're wicked.
All right.
That's how I feel. I mean, because you know better. If you're watching this, you know better. You have the ability to comprehend situations. You're not stupid. People are not stupid. Who are stupid are the people who are doing this thinking that it's okay. You are the stupid ones. People themselves, meaning the people who would be watching this show, the people who might come across it on YouTube, if YouTube allows it to be shown, is you are generally going to be somebody who understands and comprehends things, because you're not watching this show because there are some dumb jokes being played. We don't have stunts. We are opinion show. And so if you are watching it, you're going to understand. And people who are dragged through this from a very young age definitely do not know better. Eventually, sometime, they are going to enter a state of extreme confusion. And that's where the mental health issues take place, is because now they've been led along throughout their lives. Then they become adults when they are able to start rationally thinking, start thinking things through and more critically. And when they do that, they realize that something went wrong at some point. Then they have all of these issues with all of these people that did all of these things to them, very abusive things. This is absolutely child abuse.
Absolutely.
And you deserve to have a millstone tied around your neck and you thrown into the depths of the sea.
I think, and I'm not, this isn't a counterpoint because I think it's implied in what you said, but it's an expansion. But I think it's a lot more insidious than just the side of people wanting to be nice. There is part that is part of the story, right? There is definitely and I think especially on the right, people that are theoretically conservative, but they don't want to say something that's mean, and so they aren't standing up for these important things. That's definitely an issue. But even on the left, I think that's partially true. But I think realistically, there's something much more insidious going on. And, I know that it's become something you're not supposed to say anymore, according to the left, because it's bigoted. But the whole groomer, idea, that's because, they don't want to associate, they don't want to say just because someone's gay means that they're trying to get kids, turn kids gay and stuff. And that is probably true in most cases, right?
But yet they are trying to do it. Even the what was it? Was a gay men's choir in San Francisco that came out with a song that said, "We are coming after your children." That was so
creepy.
It's very creepy.
But no, my point was going to be more that it doesn't matter if they're trying to do it. You don't have to be trying to groom someone. Like, they are grooming. It's not that whether they're trying to groom, whether they want to groom is irrelevant. What they're doing is grooming. It's
Yes.
whether it's intentional or inadvertent, it is grooming, and it's dangerous, and it's
Yeah.
something that it should be illegal, should be made. Should be protected against these things.
Well, I like what Ronald Reagan once said, and he said that the problem with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant; it's just that they know so much about things that are not so. So,
Mhm.
in this article that was posted by Fox 13 in Utah, titled "Opposition to New Law Banning Transgender Surgeries for Utah Youth Continues." This is by Chris Arnold from Fox 13 in Utah, and he talks about this. He brings up this one of the people who opposes this new law in Utah. Her name is Amy Whelan. She's a senior staff attorney with the National Center for Lesbian Rights, based out of San Francisco, California. And this is what she said, and I highlighted this specifically because I want to completely tear apart her statement, and that is, she says, this is such extreme government overreach. So a parent being allowed to do what they are supposed to do, which is what this Utah law does. It says the parents are the ones that have the rights to control what their children do and do not do and can and cannot do. A government allowing doctors, a government allowing healthcare teachers, counselors, all of these people who would be telling them, in some cases pastors, and allowing them to control other people's children, that is the extreme government overreach. The extreme government overreach is not to protect children. The extreme government overreach is to not protect children, to allow other people to prey upon children, that and then be protected to do so.
Question
That
on
is the
that,
government overreach.
because I think you read more than I did on it. Does the law allow parents to have the gender affirmation care given to their children?
So
I thought it
this
banned
does
it
not.
entirely.
This actually does not go into that. It just talks about the bill itself.
My understanding was it banned it. Like it allows it for those who are currently undergoing the treatments, but other than that, it bans it. Like you cannot do.
In Florida, I do know that in Florida, it is the medical board in Florida set up a rule last year that prohibits doctors from prescribing puberty blockers, hormone therapy, or surgeries to minors. And it's specifically, I think it's a little bit more familiar with Florida because they wanted to make sure that these laws put all of these decisions in the hands of parents, and obviously any medical
Right.
personnel that does that to a minor in the state of Florida is now going to be faced with legal issues
there
if
are
they try to do
things.
so.
My point was that there are things that shouldn't be in the hands of the parents. Like parents don't have the right to actually abuse their children, and that's really what the debate comes down to: is what's abusive to children. These people on the left think it's abusive to the children to not allow them to
not do it, but it's okay to let them do it, which is
Right.
abusive.
And we believe that it's abusive to do that to children.
The mental abuse, the physical abuse that is being done to children. We are mutilating their bodies. We are selling our children.
If you took it to race and you took it, sorry to interrupt, but just let me throw this out related. If you took it to race and you had say white parents that had that had adopted a black child, and then they were having medical procedures to bleach the kid's skin to try to turn him white.
That's abuse.
Everyone would be like, abuse. No, the law should prevent against that. That should not be allowed.
Yes.
Even if the kid thought he wanted to be white and felt traumatized that he wasn't white, or because of whatever reasons, it would still be something where it would be very obvious that's not what you should be doing. And
we've turned a corner because we for a long time, for many decades, we allowed parents to say that it wasn't okay to vaccinate their children against whatever. And now the parents are being told that they can't do that their kids can go ahead and get a COVID vaccine without the permission of the parents, without the knowledge of the parents. And in many of these cases, a lot of these kids are going to school and they're learning this gender affirming crap from their schools, and they're being told before they go home that they are not supposed to talk about this with their parents. They have to keep it from their parents, and that is what groomers do. So one of the things that really just gets me about what this Amy Whelan said. She said the reason why we are so concerned about these laws is that it is unprecedented in our nation's history. No, it's not. States do not step in like this to ban medical care for groups of people. Well, they do when it comes to the rights of an unborn child.
Well, yeah,
They
I'd like to talk to her about the
and
skin bleaching example I brought up.
yeah, so I
See if she
mean,
agrees.
you want to talk about banning medical care for groups of people? They are trying to pass laws that allows for a child to be killed on the table after they've been delivered from their mother's womb.
Yeah.
So you want to talk about banning medical care? That is the epitome of banning medical care, life-saving banning of medical care. Transgenderism
I know,
is not
and they sit
life-saving.
and try and
This is
claim
a
that it's the medical care of the woman that it's all
this
about. It's about the
yes,
woman's rights,
exactly.
and they
But
ignore the rights of the babies.
transgenderism is not medical care. This is mental health care gone awry. This is mental health care turning around on itself, chasing its own tail, because it's not mental health care. The proper mental health care is to tell them this is not correct.
To help them to understand that.
Yeah. I saw something interesting recently. Well, sometimes I watch one of those, guys on the street. They talk to people, they ask them questions, and they come up with really stupid answers. But this one guy was asked how many genders there were, and he said, I've thought about this. I think that 100 years from now, yeah, somebody could come in and we could dig up everybody that's alive today will be dead in 100 years. Their bones will be dug up, and they're going to be called one of two things: a man or a woman. That's it. He goes, so I think there are just two.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's factual. That's science. That's the science for you.
That is pure
Like,
science.
there is science
Exactly.
to it. And you could play around a little bit with definitions of whether or not the external physical parts that you cut off are the defining factors or not. But that's a semantic issue that you're just playing with the semantics of it. When it comes to the science, it's defined at a chromosome level.
It's not physical. This is the biological part aspect of it, the physiology of a person, the which is down to their very DNA, is male or female. There's nothing else in between. It's going to be male or female. It's interesting that you also mentioned.
Oh, go ahead.
That it's interesting that you also mentioned before we got on the air that of that statement about the people in the UK, is that what were you saying about a 1,200% increase for boys,
right? And
but the rest was for the girls.
That was. It says in just 8 years, the increase in children seeking to transgender themselves has gone up 4,500% for girls and 1,250% for boys, which is another indication of the social contagion side of it.
Yeah, we've talked about this quite a bit, and that is that that all of these movements, the LGBT, the transgenderism, all of these movements are twofold. Number one, they are meant to disrupt the family. It's meant to destroy the family and the family unit on Earth. The other thing is the way that you go after that is you take away the desire for people to have children. And we've talked about cancel culture a lot, but we've also talked about how the real movement behind the cancellation with this transgenderism and transgender sports and all of that is to destroy womanhood. So if you destroy motherhood, you've destroyed womanhood. And for that number that you brought up, 4,200% of an increase with girls, that 4,200 is that what you said? Was it 4,200%
4,500 for girls and
4,500% growth for girls.
I'm on a lifesitenews.com.
Okay, so these are all girls now who are deciding that they
this article
decided that they want to be boys, and we know that this is very socially driven. This is because teenage girls are they go through a lot of hormonal changes more so than boys do, and with these things, you've got all of the games that girls play with one another and all that, and how horrible they can be mentally towards one another, but all of these things with the transgender athletes, they are meant to cancel out women.
Yeah.
and
What
to
better way to
take away,
cancel out women than to turn all the women into men?
into yeah, to turn them all into men, to take away their desire to have children. I read an article about, or not an article, but I saw something about these two gay men that picked up a child who was birthed through a surrogate mother in Canada, and they posted pictures of this child on social media, and the way that they referred to their child, they talked about the surrogacy, number one, but number two, they referred to their child as most precious luggage. So they were coming back from Canada to the United States with this child, but they referred to the child as most precious luggage.
Which I could
So
see
first of
doing
all,
jokingly, but I assume you're implying that they weren't joking. That
I am
this was
implying
serious.
that
That's the kind of joke
two
I'd
things.
tell. Is what
I'm
I'm
implying
saying.
that two things are happening here. Number one, these two gay men were taking away a mother. They were taking that mother out of the picture. So now that
Mhm.
child is not going to have a mother.
Right.
Number two is when that child had a chance to have a mother. And number two is that because she made that choice to do this. Number two is that they refer to the child as luggage. Now, that child is now going to be groomed in a lifestyle befitting those gay parents
Right.
and what they deem as socially acceptable and all morally acceptable. And so you've taken away now that child's ability to learn good from evil.
And
That child's not going to learn
that
good
brought
from
up a
evil.
thought that I want to just throw in related to grooming. Like because I know that there's going to be some controversial. Certain people would hear that and think it's derogatory.
Yeah, I
And
don't care.
well, but I want to point out that grooming is not derogatory. Grooming is neither good or bad. It depends on what you're being groomed in. Like, I think it's the
Yeah,
responsibility of parents to groom their children. I groom my children. I groom my children in what I believe to be wholesome family life and in the religious ideals that I believe in and in what I believe are the best attributes and principles for them to follow to have and to follow to have a good, wholesome, healthy, righteous life. And that is my responsibility as a parent, is to groom my children. So just saying that someone is grooming someone is not necessarily in and of itself a derogatory thing. It's what you're grooming them in and how you're grooming them that makes it derogatory or not.
it's really interesting. Isn't it interesting how through the decades and all of these things that have been handed down from generation to generation, and all these statistics that have been tracked over the decades that show things like the success rate of a person in life, the success of a person in marriage, the success that they are in school. All of these things point and usually come from people who grew up in a traditional family home with a mother and a father. These generally come from people who have no aptitude or much less aptitude to commit crime. Will come from traditional family homes. People who have a father in the home has a huge impact on people who do or do not commit crimes. And so we have all of these statistics throughout the decades that we point to, and now we're no longer pointing to those things. We're now being told that it's science that says that it's okay to do these things when there's
Right.
nothing that backs it up statistically whatsoever. Nothing scientific backs it up. What backs it up is emotion. And when people tie emotion to science, you can make science anything. And that's what's happening right now.
I wanted to bring up also just real quickly because I thought it was relative. And I know you're not into games. I've been kind of into video games lately, and so I've been following this Hogwarts Legacy stuff. So it's related to the topic in that Hogwarts Legacy, which I'm quite excited for. I have kids. We've talked about that before. Why you're less excited about video games than I am is because I have small kids, and kids that are into Harry Potter too. But J.K. Rowling, is known as anti. I don't think she actually is anti, but it depends on how you define anti, I guess, but
She's
she's
anti-trans. I would say she's
anti-trans, yeah.
definitely anti-trans.
And
Yeah. Yeah. She doesn't agree with it.
she's what she calls herself, a TERF, I guess, a trans something radical
But she's
feminist,
but
trans
see,
exclusive radical feminist is what it calls for.
yeah,
TERF, yeah.
she supports gay and lesbian lifestyle.
Yeah, very much so. We know when she outed Dumbledore, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, there's been this huge backlash against the game itself, which the game is licensed, to J.K. Rowling's estate or whatever, obviously. But other than that, she's not involved in it at all. And this company, it's actually a company in Utah, that Avalanche Studios, that has developed it. A lot of the people that my brother and my other brother have worked with and known professionally and stuff were involved in developing it. And but man, it's getting all of this just hate from the left because of J.K. Rowling's stance on it. The reason I bring this up is not just to talk about the video game, because like I said, I know you're not as interested in that, but rather to talk about the left eating its own kind of concept. Because as you pointed out, J.K. Rowling she's not on the right. She's socially very much on the left. But you have to really quickly accept, if you get into that world at all, that the ideals of feminism and even the ideals of homosexuality don't align with the ideals of trans. Trans sort of destroys it. Trans destroys womanhood. So if you actually are a true feminist, which that has its own problems. That's another show that we can talk about. Obviously, is the feminist issues. But you can't be a feminist and believe in womanhood and then also support
and then
trans,
support transgenderism,
because trans by its default basically just says there's no such thing. There's no such thing as a woman, and no such thing as a man.
Yes,
gender has no meaning. So.
And it really is twofold, because you dupe a woman into thinking that she's a man, which means now she's no longer going to have she will not have children, and possibly take away the ability of herself to have children by having a hysterectomy. But also a biological man cannot have children. So you've destroyed that woman's ability to have children, taking away womanhood. That's how I would define it.
Right. Yeah, and that is getting right to the root of the matter. And feminism is problematic anyway when it comes to the female, because feminism in a lot of ways destroys womanhood. But it does it in a different way. Feminism tries to turn women into men in a different way than trans. Trans literally tries to turn women into men, and feminism just tries to make women like men. And to erase the feminine and the homemaking and the caring and the tenderness and the motherhood and the things that are the traditional feminine. It tries to destroy, and it's all, as you said, it's all calculated to destroy family, to destroy the home and the family. And boy, howdy, we're seeing the results of that starting. Not starting, but it's creeping more and more into even every aspect of society, and even in places that used to be safe. The small town, conservative backwater places have started this stuff's bled into it, and it's getting pretty ubiquitous.
Well, and what is so amazing is how much the Western world has grasped onto this, and the people who are now becoming the only people willing to have children are mostly religious women, religious people, particularly Christian. And we see that there is a stark decline in birthing, in births, in childbirth, to the point where now they're now seriously considering having children born basically in pods. These are test tube babies that are going to be born. And once government allows that to happen, the inhumanity of having something like that happen, now you have you now have the clone army from Attack of the Clones. You've got children who can be raised in any way whatsoever. They can be shaped and molded in whatever. Who's now the governing the authority? It's going to be the government. What the government says will happen, and there's nothing these kids will be able to do about it. I've been reading this book about the pirates in the Republic of the
I knew you'd
Bahamas.
get
So,
pirates into the.
well, but
You've been
there's
so
no,
into
but
pirates lately. And
it
by the way, did you
this was
notice my
life.
new background here?
You're
Yeah.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, cool.
Yeah.
You got to put together. That's awesome.
Pirates, yeah.
So the in about this time during the Baroque and early colonial periods in England, the life for children, the lives of children were horrible, especially if you were poor or if you were an orphan. And
Yeah.
there was one child who was forced to go to sea, and he served as a cabin boy. And
I
the
remember reading
captain of
about
the
that,
ship,
yeah.
it was so yeah, it was so brutal on these ships. And this is why people turned to piracy, was because the life of a merchant sailor or a naval sailor was absolutely horrible. Navy was absolutely the worst. And so this
Yep.
child was not liked by his captain. And the things that this captain did, he not only flogged him, so he whipped him like crazy, but then he took the child and he dragged him around the deck with a rope tied to his neck. Then he trampled on the child. Then he forced all of the crew to trample upon this child. He's like 12 years old, and many of the crew refused to do so, and they themselves were flogged for doing it. And so this abuse was absolutely rampant, not just for the sailors, but also for
Doesn't
children who
doesn't
were on
quite
board.
not quite the same as the Disney pirate.
No, not at all, not at all. And
Maybe the
and
bad
and so
guys a little bit.
the captain was eventually, by the way, the captain was eventually executed for doing what he did to that boy, but there was nobody to stop him. And so you had this horrible lifestyle for children that was occurring. And you look at the advances that we made as a society, and now we're reverting. I think we are reverting back to those same things. We're reverting now back to where children are being sold into slavery. Children are being sold as sex slaves. Children are being sold as slave labor. There's slave labor in China. We have children who are the dastardly things that the Islamic culture will do to
All
children.
right.
And then the same thing, the mutilation of the genital mutilation of girls in Muslim
Yeah, the
countries.
abusive stuff going on.
Absolutely. And then
Terrible.
now the genital mutilation among our own children in the United States and the Western
Not
world.
not to count not even including all the murder of children that's happening
All of the
in the
murder
womb
by their own
by
parents,
their own
the
parents.
abuse by their own parents, and all of these things that are now creeping back. Yes, we had periods in throughout all of history where children were subjected to things, but we had a very long period of time when children were considered very, very precious, by and large, very precious. And now the preciousness of childhood is being forcibly taken away from them by the people who are supposed to be the stewards of their safety. And
Yeah.
that's what's partly so disconcerting about this, is the destruction of the children who have no control over it.
Well, I think, going back to the earlier thought that, the idea of wickedness never being happiness, there, people can debate back and forth what actually brings happiness and what happiness is. You and I, we believe that happiness can only come and will only ever, true happiness will only ever come through, turning to the Lord and through following his guiding principles, because the Lord is the only one in his all-knowing state who understands true happiness and understands what will actually bring happiness to us. And a lot of times that is things that we as mortals cannot understand, which is why we have to turn to the Lord. We think we know what's going to bring us happiness, but we time and again fail. And yeah, we may have fleeting pleasures here and there, but when we turn to our natural inclinations, almost unavoidably we bring ourselves misery, and we lead to the destruction of society and the destruction of nations, and the destruction of souls, and the destruction and the pain and the hurt and you know abuse of children, as you pointed out.
Yeah,
And
mankind's laws cannot, they are incapable of turning to happiness.
yeah, because we as mortals don't really truly understand happiness. We don't truly understand ourselves. It goes back to that idea of being able to, the self-reporting of this made me happier. It's like we don't know. We actually don't know what true happiness is. We get fleeting tastes of it here and there and stuff as we do turn to the Lord, and the Lord gives us these opportunities to be parents and to sacrifice and to work hard and to develop principles that are as Christ was and practice those. And through going through those sorts of experiences, we get tastes of true happiness here and there. But left to our own devices, we would almost certainly not find happiness. We might find pleasures. We might build cool things. We might, build a grand society. And then, of course, we turn around and destroy it, and tear it down. And you see through history, society falling again and again and again because mankind doesn't truly understand how to find true peace and happiness. And so that's where you and I have a faith tradition that teaches us, and we believe that we have to turn to the Lord. The Lord is the true source of happiness. If we turn to the Lord and we trust in Him, we can find happiness. The Lord would have us protect children. That's for sure. So
yeah, there was something that I remember having a conversation with my mom about a couple years ago, and it had to do with my younger brother who has struggled the majority of his life with happiness, and he turned away from the church a long time, when he was 15 years old, and he's 50 now, and for him, he always tried to find that happiness somewhere else, and he's
yep.
by and large very unhappy. He's got mental issues now, and
because we all do seek happiness. Yeah,
we do, but it's where we seek it. And one of the things that I mentioned to my mom was that it is interesting that if you look at the people who are unhappy, virtually all of them do not have a strong relationship with their Savior. They don't have a strong relationship or a strong testimony. They don't have strong faith in the gospel and in the Lord. And so they turn to things that are available to them that they can see and touch and hear and smell. And none of those things are, those are all very
happiness.
Those are all very temporary things. And think about it like this. You might think about getting something for a very long time, and you and I talk about the purchases that we make, and some of these purchases that we talk to each other about will take us years before we actually get them. We talk about it. We have other priorities that come up, and we finally do get them.
If we ever get them. Yeah.
If we ever get them. But in some cases we do get them. And while they are cool, we never talk about how happy we are that we got them. We talk about that it's awesome to have them. We talk about
fun,
that
yeah.
it's fun.
Exactly. I'm the proud new owner of a PS5. Thank you.
Oh, you got one. Okay.
Yeah, got a PS5. And Valentine's Day gift was the excuse. We opened it early though. We got it today.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean the idea behind getting it was not that the PS5 and the video game playing and that sort of stuff. I personally think video games
not going to bring
they're
you
dangerous.
Happiness.
And they're not going to bring happiness, and they could bring misery and stuff. But what I do believe brings happiness is family relationship and family fun time and family activity, and video games can help with that if used appropriately. So.
Right, and but I think for people out there watching this and might have hard time comprehending why worldly things don't bring happiness, and it's really, if you go to Amazon and you're looking at something and you think it's awesome and you make a purchase, the day that you get it, are you satisfied?
Almost without exception, I have buyer's remorse.
Yeah, okay, but are you
put that aside? I'm actually usually more excited and happy researching it and anticipating it than actually purchasing it. Yeah,
exactly. Now I am reading this book, that I told you about, The Republic of Pirates, and this is a historical book. It's not a novel,
right?
And it's completely factual, based on real journal entries and historical events that occurred. And so I'm enjoying reading it, but it's not bringing me lasting happiness. I'm just doing it because it's something that interests me.
Yeah.
So if you do something like this on Amazon and you get it, and most people would probably understand this, is you get something and then two days later, a week later, 2 weeks later, you don't think about it as often. Another example is a child who talks about getting something for his birthday or her birthday, and they get it, and then the day of their birthday they get it, and then they leave the present inside and they go outside, they pick up a stick and they start beating a cardboard box with it. That's what they find entertaining, not playing with the toy that you spent so much
Well, and the
money
kids
getting and then
tend to
begging so much
enjoy the
for.
opening of the
Yeah,
presents more than the actual
exactly.
presents themselves,
Right,
depending on the
exactly.
age. Depending on the age,
It's
but
the
yeah.
excitement, and all of a sudden they've got
Yeah.
it, and now the excitement's gone, and it's like, yeah, okay,
Yeah,
so
halfway through Christmas Day, all the toys are laying broken, abandoned on the floor. That's not obviously
or
100% true,
yeah,
but yeah.
yeah, but many times they are just left, and so we have so many instances like that. But when you have something that is truly lasting, and you talked about the time spent with family, when you spend time with family and you have that quality time, you want to spend more time with your family. When you spend time with a toy, you don't necessarily want to spend more time with that toy. You like spending time with that toy until that toy is now old. With family, it's different. If you have that quality time that really brings joy and comfort to you, it builds
Right.
upon that, and you can really create
But
lasting
it's
relationships.
deeper than that even, because the true joy from family, I think,
It's
the
godliness.
fun times together is great and everything, but it's actually the hard work and the suffering and the sacrifice and the commitment and the all that sort of stuff that in the end, looking back on your life, that's going to actually matter. Those things that you fought through that were hard, that
Yeah.
you stayed true to because you believed in a higher thing, you believed in a better way.
And those are
It's the
all
same thing.
godly
It's the
traits.
same thing for religion and the idea of heaven, and going to heaven. It's like you sacrifice because you believe in a better way, you believe in a better thing, and so you put aside your natural man, you put aside the cravings that you have, the natural tendencies that you have towards appetites. You suppress those in favor of something that you believe to be a higher and a better way. And it's the same sort of thing, and it's true with anything. It's true with almost anything that you could apply to it. That when like you talk about working out, you and I have both made some efforts to be in shape and lose weight throughout our lives, and it's not fun. Like working out's not fun.
Mm-mm.
It's hard. It hurts. It's unpleasant. Getting up, forcing yourself to go to the gym or whatever is an unpleasant thing in a lot of ways. But you believe in a better thing. You believe that the better thing that you're sacrificing for, in the grand scheme of things, will make you happier, and that you will find happiness through that. And I think the same thing applies, to bring that full circle. It applies to the gender idea. It's like this fleeting idea of, I'm going to eat more Twinkies and that's going to make me happy, versus I'm going to eat healthy because long term I trust that that's going to make me healthy. Well, I think the same thing's happening, where the gender affirming stuff is a bunch of Twinkies. They're shoving Twinkies down kids' throats
Yeah.
because the kids are saying, I'm not going to be happy unless you give me Twinkies. And it's not
That's
true.
that's
It's
exactly
not
what
going
it
to
is.
lead. It's not going to lead to happiness.
And this discussion kind of leads me to a poem that William Shakespeare wrote. I don't think it was a poem. I think it was just part of one of his plays. But it says, it's talking about fleeting worldly things. It says, "What win I if I gain the thing I seek? A dream, a breath, a froth of fleeting joy? Who would buy a minute's mirth to wail a week, or sell eternity to get a toy? Or what fond, no, or for one sweet grape, who would the vine destroy? Or what fond beggar but to touch the crown would with the scepter straight be stricken down?" All of those things in that poem are about fleeting
I'm
things.
impressed.
Yeah, I messed up on one
Yeah.
part. So what when I do I if I get the thing I seek, am I going to get a dream, which means it's not real? A breath, very short. A froth of fleeting joy, obviously something that's very quick, right? A little bit. Who would buy a minute's mirth to wail a week? So for 1 minute of happiness, you're going to be miserable for a week. You think
Well,
about drugs and things like that.
the
You
same exact principle is taught in Hebrews 11. where it talks about faith, faith being the substance of things, and all that.
Yeah, the hope for
The rest of that chapter talks about all of these historical figures that went through various things. It talks about Abraham and Isaac and Sarah and all the different, and it leads to that exact thing, is that all of these people toiled, and suffered in strange lands and never received the promises that they were given, because Abraham didn't actually get the promised land, and the Israelites didn't actually, 40 years in wandering in the wilderness, they all stayed faithful and stayed true to the cause of receiving something that they never actually got in this life. And that's because they believed in a land that was better. They believed in actually a heavenly land that would fulfill that promise. And it's the same sort of principle. Who would cast away heaven for a mansion here on earth? And it's the exact same thing that you're talking about.
Yeah. And so you want to talk about living a life of misery. I mean, roaming around the desert for 40 years in the wilderness. Moses, was a very righteous person, and yet he never got to see the promised land. And I don't think that Moses would have complained one single bit about it. He knew what his end goal was, and that was to do the right thing and to follow the Lord. There are
putting off yourself.
So many things about transgenderism, so many things about the LGBT, about all of the ailments that we are faced with today. Social media, we are taught that we have to receive instant gratification for everything. Our technologies are now built in such a way to gratify us and satisfy us instantly. And when we are not gratified and satisfied instantly, we complain. And the grievance society that started in the 1960s is much worse today than it was in the 1960s, because now you have so many different groups of people, not just the hippies. Complain. Yeah, it used to be the hippies, but now we have all these different groups, different ages, different sexes, different races. All of these people are now able to complain about everything, anything and everything, and we have anything and everywhere to go to do it. And people will either agree or disagree. And if you disagree, then you can call them all kinds of names and shame them into silence, or get into really horrible arguments. And so none of this whatsoever brings any lasting happiness, joy, peace, or legacy. What this brings is self-destruction, pride, and misery. That's the stark contrast between the two.
Well, I might rephrase that and say that pride is part of what brings the self-destruction and misery. But yeah.
But the continuance builds that pride, right? It does continue to build the pride. Yeah, for sure. It actually, and you're
pride,
you're at 100% right.
The fall, though, right?
Pride creates.
Is that the right quote?
Well, yeah. Pride will generate the cause for all wickedness,
right?
Because
as
pride
converse to humility.
Yeah, pride says not thy will, or not my will, but thine be done. Pride says not thy will, but mine be done. Yeah. So all sin stems from pride,
and that goes right back to what we're talking about is trusting in the Lord for as the source of happiness, because He's the source of knowledge, and knowledge is what he knows. He understands what happiness is. So. Yeah, I've come to the conclusion that is the challenge of life. I mean, that's the fight of life. It's a fight between pride and humility. Everything that we do comes down to that, and humility comes down to trusting in the Lord and putting your trust and faith in Him. So, with that, we will finish up for this week. We hope you enjoyed the discussion we had. And if you have any thoughts or further comments or debates or whatever, feel free to put them in the comments, and keep it civil for us if you would. We'd appreciate that.
Yep.
Even if you disagree.
Please like and subscribe. And if you like our content, check out our other videos right here on the Christian Church Show.
Cratchin Church Show.
Chanel.
Cratchin Church Show.
Chanel. Yes, Chanel.
Thanks, and we will see you next week.